Hi, and thank you for joining the What is NPKUA's Maternal PKU Mentor Program. And I'd like to start out by acknowledging all of our panelists today. First, my name is Katrina Swenson. I'm the National PKU Alliance Project and Communications Coordinator, and I'm the staffer with the Maternal PKU Mentor Program. We also have with us today Beth Ogata from the Division of Genetic Medicine from the University of Washington, Carrie, who's a maternal PKU mentor, Margaret, who's also a maternal PKU mentor, Katie, a program mentee, and Laura, a program mentee. I'd like to first start off by saying if you have any questions and answers, please feel free to type them in the chat line with the chat bubble on your screen, and make sure to chat to all panelists and attendees, and your questions will be answered at the end of the discussions. And thank you very much. Go ahead, Beth.
Hi, thanks for participating. I wanted to start by giving a brief overview of the NPKUA Maternal PKU Mentor Program. It's a unique program that helps create relationships between two women with PKU. So one woman who is pregnant or wants to become pregnant, and another woman with PKU who's managed a pregnancy successfully. It offers the perspective of women who've been there. They can provide support, empathy, shared experiences, and practical tips to the woman who wants to become pregnant or is newly pregnant. It doesn't replace medical care, but it really enhances care from my side of it, from the healthcare provider side of it. Having women connected and that extra support really makes things a lot easier. You'll hear more about details of how to participate in the program at the end, but in a nutshell, how it works is a woman decides she wants to become a mentee, takes a look at the mentor profiles, and works with her dietitian and the NPKUA to be matched with a mentor that fits her personality and pregnancy needs. And again, it's just a neat program. It's a meaningful opportunity to help women experience the joy of pregnancy and provide some resources for the challenges of managing pregnancy and PKU at the same time. So I'm going to stop there because I want to let all the you want to hear from the mentors and mentees. And so thank you to women who have graciously agreed to share your experiences with the program and in general. So I'm going to start with a question for the mentors, and then Carrie, I'm going to call on you first to tell us a little bit about the role of a maternal PKU mentor.
A maternal PKU mentor is a part of the pregnancy team. So we view ourselves as assisting the dietitian, as assisting the clinic, and as assisting the mentee. A lot of times there are things that a clinic will tell a patient and the patient is overwhelmed. That patient who is the mentee comes to the mentor and says, well, they said something about this and it sounded like that, and we'll help them clarify their thoughts based on their visit and understand what it was that the clinic said to them, and help them form any questions that they might have and how to phrase them to their dietitian to get the answer that they will understand. We also serve as a support if a woman has difficulty during pregnancy with simple pregnancy things like morning sickness, if they're nervous about the fetal echocardiogram, if they don't know the steps that are going to be taken, what is this, what is that, we're there to provide the knowledge for them as well, help them learn self-advocacy and self-education along the way so that they have a broader base of knowledge to work on themselves.
I love that. I love the piece of the team part of it. Margaret, do you have anything to add about the role of the mentor?
I think one thing that is important for the mentor and mentee is that since we've been there before, we've learned to self-advocate for ourselves. And so in that, we're able to help, like Carrie said, direct them to their dietitian with maybe some questions they don't realize they should be asking, so they can start to learn to self-advocate.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great strength and tool to give to people. questions for the mentees. And I think I'll start with Katie. What was the most confusing or frightening part of preconception and pregnancy, having PKU?
The most frightening part for me was making sure that initial, when I first spoke to the dietitian and started sending my blood levels in, of course there was a little bit of a lag, because before pregnancy we're all really bad about sending our as frequent labs in as we should. I will admit it, but when I initially started the preconception, I was very nervous about my blood levels, and just would I be going into this feeling like I was failing right from the start. Luckily, my levels were on the lower end, but even throughout the entire before and during pregnancy, just that fear that I was going to go above that recommended 2 to 6. And, you know, even if it was 1 week, what would I be doing to my baby? And it was just a constant fear of mine that I would go above. One of the very frustrating things that I felt, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate, is how long it takes to get the blood labs back. During pregnancy, it can take my lab as much as 2 weeks to get back. So if I got in 2 weeks a blood lab that was back, but I had made some changes to try and improve my levels, to me it just seemed so irrelevant by the time I got the blood level back. But yeah, that's probably about all I have.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Laura? Any fears or?
Yeah, I think just overall with pregnancy in general, when you have not been pregnant before, you just really don't know what to expect, and then throw in PKU and it can be really frightening. I think at least personally, I'd worked up in my mind just like for so long, hearing from doctors how important it is to be on diet and, you know, have perfectly managed PKU if you are planning to become pregnant. And when you are pregnant, I think I'd worked up in my mind that how dangerous it can be, and not like how successful it also can be when it's managed well. And I know for me, my first OBGYN appointment, when I found out I was pregnant, they were very nice. They asked about I told them about PKU, and when I left, I saw them and the nurse staff Googling what PKU was. They were all sitting around a computer, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, that was very frightening for me. They did refer me to a high-risk OBGYN, but I remember thinking in that moment, like, oh, wow. Like, even providers right now are having to refresh on this. That doesn't make me feel super encouraged, you know? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no, and I think it's good to have providers who know what they don't know and will look stuff up, but I can also see needing to having the support of a mentor who can say, oh, I've been there, and this is, you know, here's how we're going to get through it. Great. Back to the mentors. Margaret, have you come across, or what would happen if you worked with a mentee who was not on diet?
I've had a couple of mentees who were trying to return to diet. Generally, when I reach out to them, I try to assess the situation, ask them, do they have a clinic? Are they taking formula? Are they eating low protein specialty food? If they don't have a clinic, I try to get them some resources of like what clinics might be in their area that you can find pretty easily online. And then I encourage them, if they do have a clinic especially, to reach out to the dietitian and create a plan to get back on diet, even if it's a baby step of just starting formula and then adding low protein foods, just so that they have direction and are confident in getting back on diet. After that's occurred, and we have more communication after some time for them to be able to do that, then I check in with them. Do they like their formula? Are they getting it? If they aren't taking it all, why not? What's the problem? Is it a work schedule? Is it they don't like it? Is it that they can't get it? I check to see if same idea on medical foods, are they able to get it, and so forth. I ask if they've connected with a dietitian, and then I start into more the things, the personal experience, like how is meal planning going? Do you like what you're eating? Do you need some recipes? Do you need some tips? And then kind of try to customize it to see where they need encouragement and support to get back on diet completely.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like a nice way to ease things back to treatment. What about you, Carrie? Anything to add?
It's my plan of attack is very similar to Margaret's.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I make sure I take into consideration, though, is the amount of knowledge about PKU that the mentee has, because so often women are, at least in our age range, are returning to diet with the express purpose of getting pregnant or because they are pregnant. So do they know what it means to take X amount of feed? Do they know what it means to take formula? Do they, like, there are some very simple things that often are lost in communication, and the clinic thinks the mentee understands, and the mentee honestly has no clue what's going on and is too scared to speak up. But I definitely follow a lot of the same steps that Margaret spoke about, and obviously if the mentee is already pregnant, it's a little bit more of an urgent situation. But if she's working towards getting pregnant, we have a little bit more leeway to ease baby steps and get them out of the high fee foods and back onto diet and low fee foods and formula.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that probably that translation of clinics speak to putting it into practice. Although I like to think I'm able to do that, sometimes it just doesn't get there. And so I bet that's an extra nice support. Laura, question for you. We'll start with you first. What did you look for when you were looking for a mentor?
Yeah, I think I know that I started looking for a mentor when I was starting the pre-con diet. My Phe levels were in range, but just not where my clinic wanted them to be for pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was really looking for someone besides a doctor who could kind of help me through those baby steps like Carrie was talking about. I knew I wanted a baby. I felt like there were so many things that I needed to do to get there, and it was very overwhelming. And I needed someone truly to just tell me, like, Laura, calm down. I've done this before. Here, like, let me help you. You can do this, you know, kind of walk me through everything. And honestly, minus PKU, I would have probably needed that through a regular pregnancy. So yeah, I was just looking for someone that would be able to listen, but also, like Margaret had talked about earlier, about advocating for yourself. That was really huge that Margaret and I talked about a lot as I was going through my pregnancy, especially at the beginning. And there's so much like new things that happen. And like one example is Phe tolerance changing. That kind of like, you think you get the hang of it, and then a kind of a wrench gets thrown in, and you all of a sudden this is not true for everyone, but sometimes can eat more Phe as the baby grows. And I know just so many different changes throughout pregnancy is what I just really needed someone to like help me through all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Katie, anything to add? What kind of things you were looking for in a mentor?
Very similar to what Laura said. I would agree too. I had a similar experience when I went to my doctors. They were like, wow, this is great. Okay, what's PKU? And luckily for me, I have had a relationship with Carrie, who happens to be my mentor. And prior to even thinking about pregnancy, I already knew about this program and knew when the time was going to come that this would be the right fit for me. And just having that experience since I was younger, being part of a PKU network of some sort has been huge for my own support in getting through the challenges and also celebrating the good things around PKU. Like you, Laura, when those points in the pregnancy when I was able to tolerate more Phe, while it was scary, it was also fun celebrations of me being able to try some different foods. So it was really nice to have my mentor to celebrate those with, where she really understood, not just, oh, I'm pregnant and I like to eat this food and that food and eat a little bit more food than I should, but the true connection with PKU and being able to eat different foods that you never were able to eat. So that's about it. Laura pretty much summed it up for me.
Great. back to the mentors. So Carrie, have you ever come across, or what would you do if a mentee was already pregnant before preconception diet started?
I've had that happen. It's actually, I've had it happen quite often. And I think I touched on it with my answer to the previous question. It's a little bit more of an emergency or an urgent situation. Making sure that the mentee gets back on formula or gets her levels down to therapeutic level immediately, gets in touch with her dietitian immediately, and is in the care of clinic, and the clinic does understand that she is currently pregnant. It's unfortunately very overwhelming for mentees when this happens, because a lot of times they didn't mean to get pregnant that soon. They weren't planning on it. So there's a lot of emotion that comes along with that, on top of, holy cow, now I have to manage my PKU, and I've been very lax, and panic. And there's a lot of calming and crying and trying to get the mentee to focus on herself and her diet and realize that this is for your baby, and you have to do this. You can do it, but you have to. But it's a wonderful feeling when a mentee who came to you already 4, 5, 6 weeks pregnant and levels in the low teens is then reaching their second trimester with a level of a 2. And that fortunately happens quite often too.
And I would bet it would be because, in no small part, to helping facilitate that connection with the clinic and those kinds of things. Margaret, anything to add on that one?
No, just to reiterate, like Carrie said, getting care in an urgent manner. And what I try to do is send resources to her and links to her so that she knows what's available to her, especially in terms of getting connected to a clinic if she's not already connected.
Great. So Katie, this kind of relates back to the last question about looking for a mentor. Why did you select the mentor you have? When you applied, what helped you make that decision on who to select?
I sort of touched on this on the last one. So we need to do that. But Carrie and I have been wonderful friends through our connections with PKU and different support groups that we've been a part of, advocacy groups as well. We've known each other probably 15 years or so. Roughly, and maybe even more. And Carrie and I just have grown very close together. I've listened to her talk about the mentor program from its earlier stages. Again, knowing I always wanted to be pregnant, but like Laura, going to doctors and hearing how risky it can be. From such an early age, being trained or being spoken to doctors, how dangerous it can be. And I need to be careful. From the moment I was 11, I might have been spoken to about that. And just over time, Carrie and I just have had a really wonderful relationship. And I always looked up to her like an older sister, which just for me fit the perfect picture for a mentor.
Fun to hear. How about you, Laura? Any?
Well, Margaret and I have a very similar story. I know Margaret from California's advocacy groups there, and I've known her for many years. And actually, for quite a few years, she was the only woman I knew that had children, and someone I've looked up to for a very long time. We've talked about a lot of different PKU, situations and scenarios. So to me, when it was time to talk about pregnancy, my husband and I, I told him about this mentor program, and he was like, well, you should look into it. And happened to be that Margaret was a mentor. So that was perfectly planned out.
Those are fun stories to hear. The next question is for Margaret to start with. What have you worked with any mentees who have had fertility issues, or what's any approaches there?
So I had one woman who had fertility issues, and I'm not as well versed in fertility as some of the other mentors. I picked up stuff along the way. So my first two questions are, do you have a fertility specialist? And my second question is, does your clinic know that you're having problems getting pregnant? And then we kind of talk about that. And I have some stuff I could share with her, but really, if I'm in a situation like this, what I do is I ask for her permission to consult with the other mentors on the group. So I get her permission to, talk about her case, no names included, just basic details. So Carrie, for instance, has a lot of experience in this area. So I'll come to Carrie and say, hey, she's asking me this. What do you suggest? And sometimes it may be go back to the fertility specialist and ask this, start there. But then that Carrie can kind of direct me who she needs to talk to for her specific problems.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice. So it sounds like there's a network. You're not only getting your mentor, you're getting a network of people with a variety of experiences and information. Carrie, anything to add to that?
Just to expand a little on what you just commented, we do the mentors. If your specific mentor is not familiar with something that you're going through, the chances are that one or more of the other mentors have either dealt with it themselves or with a mentee of their own. So in situations like Margaret said, that we are not familiar with it, we will ask permission to discuss the mentee's case with the other mentors. And there have been 1 or 2 times that it's actually taken the entire group of mentors to help come up with an idea of where we can direct this person for assistance. It doesn't happen often that we have to involve all of the mentors, because as Margaret said, some of us have experience. I've dealt with fertility issues myself and had several mentees with fertility issues as well. So, there's, I think, two or three others that are in a similar situation. Usually there's 1, 2, maybe 3 of us that have experience, but there is a chance once in a while we come across that one thing that we need to all put our heads together. But we will never discuss a mentee's case with the other mentors if the mentee is uncomfortable. But as Margaret said, we do ask permission and make it very clear. We don't say where you're from, we don't use your name. We're stumped and we need to know if we can bounce this resource around and see. So, and that's something that does happen with fertility problems within our mentees, as well as other things.
That's a fantastically rich resource, I think. Laura, what were some of the things that you contacted your mentor about the most?
Yeah, so I contacted my mentor very often, especially at the beginning with the pre-con journey. I had so many questions about just like what a PKU pregnancy even looked like if this is high risk, how often am I going to the doctor? Can I even work? Like things like that. When I got pregnant, I was very sick for most of my pregnancy. And, I had so many questions about, how do I even drink my formula? Like, what do I do? And how to get my feed tolerance in. I had so many questions throughout the whole journey. But I would say, I think that the majority of my questions actually came earlier on in my pregnancy, once I kind of settled into okay, this is what I need to do. Then it kind of got a little bit easier, but it was nice to know that I always had Margaret to go to if I had any questions.
Katie, were there things you contacted your mentor about frequently?
Yes, again, also similar as Laura said, as I started going through the pregnancy and tests were coming up, being it was my first pregnancy, there was a lot. Just I'd leave the doctors and I'd call Carrie and I'd say, so today I did this or I did that. And just the assurance of, yep, we all went through that. Yes, that's normal. Even the time of the fetal echo, there were times that my doctor was saying, oh, I don't really think it's necessary, but myself, I just wanted to make sure everything was safe. And so there were a lot of times I ran things by my mentor and just asked for assurance and just am I right for pushing and advocating for this one thing? Or another piece of advice that I would ask my mentor is, once I had my son, my Phe levels were out of control in the beginning, and I thought that it was something that I did. So just having that assurance, even though my dietitian tried telling me, just having Carrie's support, my mentor support, surprise, Carrie, to tell me that it was normal. It was normal after delivery to have those high Phes, and that nothing was wrong, and it just was part of the journey. So again, you know, you have your team of doctors who are going to tell you what they're going to tell you, but it's nothing like hearing it from someone, your mentor, that's been through it and rode that same journey with you.
Yeah, it seems like the perfect match between, because I think with pregnancy, PKU or not, there's tons of experts who are willing to share their opinion, whether they are educated or not, and give you advice. But it's nice to have someone who's been through it and who has the expertise in what you're actually going through. Carrie, question for you. I think going through some of the, you know, what if this and what if that. What would you do if your mentee had Hyperfeed?
Oh, I like that. I've worked with a couple of girls with Hyperfeed. They're a completely different experience because often they grew up not having to take formula, not having to watch what they're eating. And when they get pregnant, all of a sudden they have to pay attention to their levels, and they are a challenge. It's very helpful when the mentee is trusting and close with their clinic, and their clinic is willing to try something outside of the box here and there. But it's like every pregnancy is different. Every PKU pregnancy is different, and every PKUer is different. So it's exciting to me when, and often I see it more with Hyperfeed mentees, the clinics are willing to try something a little bit different than they would be if the mentee was classic PKU. They'll try, okay, let's eat a little bit more Phe, or they'll try, let's try just putting you on formula, keep eating how you're eating, and let's see how that does. But it's exciting. It's kind of like seeing all of the different types of PKU all over again.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Carrie? Anything to add? That was Carrie.
No, it's,
I'm having the problem in Seattle that we don't have very often, that I can't see because the sun.
no problem.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of Hyperfeed mentees, and like Carrie said, it's making sure their levels stay in range and saying, hey, I know formula isn't always great, but you got to get it because it's the most important thing. It's going to help keep your levels down. And then just helping them adjust to different things like eating out, where before they might have had more leeway, but saying, okay, here's what we do when we ate out, here's what we did with our different tolerances during pregnancy, and kind of addressing that.
Mm-hmm. We will check in the time. So Katie, question for you as a mentee. What was one of the most beneficial things, or some of the most beneficial things about having a mentor?
Kind of going back to what I just last said, was having that person to ride the journey with you. That I feel like sums it up to a T. Working with my mentor, even if we didn't, the phone call that I had with my mentor, the question or advice I was asking wasn't answered that moment, I knew that we would follow up later on. Let's say I can't think of a specific example, but if I had a specific question for Carrie and she wasn't able to right then and there give me an answer, she would be back in touch with me immediately. So it just was someone to be able to rely on. And it just was a very, very valuable resource to have during a very scary time when there were a lot of changes happening and you're trying to be in control as much as you can, but there's a lot you're not in control of, and it's all new. And so just having that person that's been part of the journey, they're there for the ride.
Great. And Laura, I think we heard a lot of the benefits you talked about too. Were there any others that you haven't mentioned or things that have come to mind?
Yeah, I just think, I mean, so many people have gone through pregnancy, but they just don't really get a PKU pregnancy. Even close family and friends who meant very well didn't always understand. So just knowing that someone was there to encourage me. I remember multiple times like taking formula and then having morning sickness and having to take my formula again. I remember my husband like rubbing my back and being like, do you think you should call Margaret, as I'm like crying? You know, it's just nice knowing that there is someone there who fully understands and gets it and can kind of give you a kick when you need it to kind of, you know, stop feeling sorry or whatever, and just get you back on like the path that you need to be going on. So.
So the question for this is another one for the mentors is, what is the most important component to a successful relationship between a mentor and a mentee? And it sounds like just here you've developed some wonderful relationships, but I'm wondering if you had some thoughts about that. We'll start with Margaret.
Sure. I think one of the things that helps grow a relationship between a mentor and a mentee is the open communication and keeping in touch. And when you're keeping in touch, telling each other, especially from the point of the mentor, having the mentee share information, to be open and honest. So if the mentee said, I went to the mall and I couldn't, you know, I gave in to eating the X, Y, and Z, and I shouldn't have, then we can deal with that. But if we don't know that, it's hard to kind of help and encourage and redirect her. The other thing is that if we're both honest with each other and we know what's going on, like she's not drinking formula because she hasn't had it, and she doesn't tell us that, then it's hard to say, hey, here are some resources to get formula as a stopgap. So having all the pieces of information is really beneficial. And then we can build trust and have an open, honest relationship, which then carries on so much more in different areas as well.
I wholeheartedly agree. Carrie, anything to add to that? Other things that make a strong relationship?
I think Margaret hit the nail on the head when she said the open communication. You can't develop any kind of relationship if you're not communicating. And obviously the honesty and the trust is something that is a key element in this relationship. We're not here to judge. We're not here to tell you that you're wrong, tell you that you're right. We're just here to help you with whatever you decide, literally. And the women, the mentees who come to us to get that, I think have some of the most successful pregnancies and mentor relationships that I've seen.
I think that, and I think you're just, the way I've heard it, it's set up to enable that trust and that communication. I'll do one more question for the mentees, and I know the answer to these, and then we'll get into the questions that are in the chat. But the relationships you've developed are so, it's just fun to listen to. So Laura and Katie, we'll go with Laura first. The question is, did your mentor's support continue after your pregnancy? And I know the answer, I want to hear some specifics.
Yeah, so I mean, you're obviously very busy when you are done with this journey. You're not really done though, because like Katie was saying, you've got high feed levels to deal with after having the baby and all that. But even though, you know, life changed a lot, Margaret and I still check in once in a while. I actually made a big move across the country in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy, which I would not suggest to anyone. So unfortunately, I can't see her in person as much anymore, but we do still keep in contact.
Katie, how about you?
Yes, absolutely. Carrie was there for me through the whole journey, continuing afterwards. My son, he came in with a big boom. Some of you I'm recognizing on the participants, and you follow me on Facebook. My son was born with quite a few complications, and Carrie during very difficult times, was there, always checking on me, making sure I was taking care of myself, even though my baby needed a lot. And she stayed in touch. I mean, still up to this day, of course, but she stayed in frequent contact with me for the first year, just to always check and make sure I was taking care of myself. Without me taking care of myself, it would be impossible to take care of my son. So thank you, Carrie, very much for that. And I told the panel when I first started, but I recently asked Carrie to be my mentor again, because I am 12 and a half weeks pregnant again. So I'm very excited to ride this journey with Carrie. And I know for certain that this program will help me get through this pregnancy successfully, as it did the first.
Oh, that's just so nice to hear. Take a moment.
I was fighting the tears too.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing all those. There are a number of questions in the chat, and so I will just, if it's okay, Katrina and Michelle, I'll just go through them, and I was trying to in my head sort them into topics. I'm gonna go through the kind of the logisticy ones first, maybe. So, is the mentor program for women who are looking to get pregnant in the next 1 to 2 years? There's someone she's gathering information but not ready to quite yet get pregnant. I will, guessing one of the mentors would have an answer, or maybe Katrina.
Take it. So we've had women come in as mentees with no plan of getting pregnant in the very near future. We are more than happy to assign a mentor, have an initial contact, and then say, okay, you know who I am. When you're ready to start pre-con, reach out to me again. And they'll go what's called inactive. So it will be an established mentorship that goes inactive until the mentee is ready to start her journey.
Great. Another how the program works question is, how big is the program? How many mentees does each mentor have?
Yeah, that varies. We currently have 9 mentors, and the mentees, it depends, because people are going through different processes of the journey. So some mentees could have 1, 2, maybe 3, and some have, like Carrie usually has quite a few.
I think I've had as many as 13 at one point.
Yeah, and it just depends on how many they can juggle and how much communication they need in between the different mentees, because sometimes some mentees will only text, some only want to reply by email, or some by calls, some contact all the time, some, once a month or something, so it varies.
There's also, depending on the situation, some mentees may need someone who can be there more often than, a once a week check-in. They might need to speak with someone every day. They might have an urgent situation where they're going to be relying hard on their mentor. So if I have a mentee like that, I like to kind of make sure the rest of my load is a little lighter.
But we can always have a mentor for mentees, because if
Absolutely.
the way that the form is you can choose like your top 3 or who the bios that you found that were most fit your need, and then I'll reach out to the top mentee. Do you have availability? This person's asking for you, or and just specific needs, especially when people add additional information in the comments, like whether they're pre-con, whether they're on diet, whether they're pregnant and not on diet, if they're having fertility issues, and many other things. So we can always get together as a group, discuss some things to find the perfect person to fit the niche for that mentee.
Mm-hmm. And kind of along those lines, this is again finding the right fit. Someone asked the question, how do you make sure you get a mentor that has a similar fee prescription as you? Because that's not always listed.
You don't
had that question before. That's a new one.
Don't. But
Yeah.
all of the mentors are very well versed in fee control and the PKU diet, and I personally, when I'm on diet, it's 350 milligrams of fee a day. but I've helped people who have as little as 160 and as much as 1,200.
And when
It's-
you're
Go ahead.
and when you're, you know, when you're in the middle of a pregnancy, because as Carrie mentioned before, sometimes your feed tolerance goes up. So even if you had an intake of 350 milligrams, but then you get maybe, let's say, 1,500 milligrams during your pregnancy, then you get experience with each of those points. So even if your mentee's coming in at 800 or 300 and you've been able to have a fee increase during pregnancy, then you've experienced that point as well.
I think this one looks, I think we kind of covered it, but in case you have anything else to add, do you select your own mentor? Are you assigned to someone? And I think it sounded like
The mentee,
oh,
the
mentor,
mentee has a
mentees.
choice. Yeah, the mentee picks their top 3 choices, and again, it's put out to the first choice. And if the first choice can't take it because they have heavy caseload or whatever, then it goes to the second choice. But our bios are on the website, so you can read through and see what you think is going to be your best fit, and that's how you make your choice.
Okay, we have a couple questions about medication, and so someone is asking what are experiences with kuvan in pregnancy like?
So I was under the care of Dr. Richard Koch long ago before he passed, and I was one of the first patients that I'm aware of being on kuvan and pregnant. It was approved in December 2007. By March 2008, I was on kuvan, and then I got pregnant about a week later. So my first pregnancy, I was on kuvan. My second pregnancy was I was on kuvan. I'm still on kuvan. Dr. Koch was interested in a couple of different components of it. It was a newer product, of course. My clinic supported me in having kuvan, and it was a great experience. I would do it again.
Can I just hop in real quick? I as well started kuvan very, very, very early on. I was part of the initial trials. I also am still on it today, and I stayed on it during pregnancy. The only thing that they paid attention to was as I started to gain weight during the pregnancy and my Phe levels were changing, whether basically they were dropping. That was part of the protocol with adding Phe. They carefully monitored what my dosage was. And at one point I do remember going up a little bit, and then following the pregnancy being a higher weight, that needed to be adjusted as well. But otherwise they had seen from when Margaret had her baby and I had my baby 2.5 years ago, they had several women go through pregnancies safely, and there was no hesitation on my clinic's part about me continuing the kuvan therapy.
I was also the same. I also was on kuvan throughout pregnancy.
I feel left out. I'm not a kuvan responder.
I'm not a kuvan responder either, but I was under Dr. Koch, who I had my whole life and I trusted, and he did a case report regarding the use of kuvan in pregnancy, and so it was very beneficial to the community.
Great. And I like the richness of, again, getting experience and input from a whole cadre of people rather than just the 1 or 2 people you might meet. One other medication question: has anyone been on Palinzic before pregnancy?
Palinzic is not recommended for pregnancy, and I would be surprised if it's approved or there's a clinic who is okay with it in the near future.
Yeah, I don't see any clinic prescribing it and being okay with that.
The potential side effects just seem way too uncertain at this point. And I am on Palinzic, so.
Someone's asking, and again, so I think these are kind of the questions you would, if you have a mentor, these are, you can ask directly and get tailored answers, but recommendations in terms of pre-con and pregnancy while in a full-time high-stress work environment.
That's an ask your mentor question.
Yeah, but I think that, and I think adding that, because you can talk to other women who are pregnant about those kinds of questions, but then layering on that
Right.
PKU management.
Well, and it's like I said earlier, no two PKU people are the same. So what my version of high stress and managing PKU may be very different than yours. And without knowing you, I cannot give you a decent answer.
And then again, this is another kind of another question that I think I know the answer to, but we'll see what you have to say. Does every woman with PKU need to see a high-risk OBGYN?
No, it's generally going to be based on if your regular OBGYN is comfortable with it. PKU, as long as your PKU is managed, the pregnancy itself is not high risk. The delivery is not high risk. As long as your PKU is maintained, there's no reason to see a high risk OBGYN. If there are other factors that come into play, for example, if a problem is found on the fetal echocardiogram, that's a whole nother story. But in general, there is no reason to see a high-risk OBGYN just because you're pregnant with PKU.
Yeah, I would say as long as your OB and your clinic are corresponding and working together, that's the important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And again, having that input from you folks is so helpful. There's a congratulations for
Thank you.
missed that one, and I saw a couple other ones pop up too.
Thank you, everyone.
Another question came in. Thank you so much to the panelists. Are there any mentors who are not or were not on any of the recently developed PKU drugs, but pregnant with just diet? And
Oh yes, there are a few of them.
Yeah, and I think you have experience working with people with probably the gamut. It sounds like from what I heard.
I was not during my pregnancies. I was not on anything but food and formula. And I didn't go on the Palinzic until after I gave birth to my twins.
And given that I wasn't a responder to kuvan, it was like having just food and formula. So,
It didn't alter your intake at all.
Did I get one more? Another, you're awesome, and thank you to the panelists. If the participants have more questions, please type them into the Q&A quote box. I think we raced through all of them. We have a little more time. If not, you have to get my questions. More questions coming in. I'm checking off the ones we have. I'm curious. I think sharing information. I think I know the answer, but curious to hear from Carrie and Margaret about why you became a mentor and why you thought it was a good idea. Let me start with Carrie.
It's a long story. So after I had my oldest, I ended up losing 2 pregnancies and having my tubes tied because I lost the 2 babies to brain malformation and they couldn't determine the cause, and I knew I couldn't go through that kind of emotional loss again. And I kind of threw myself into helping other women with PKU through their pregnancies. I was part of a maternal PKU listserv, and I just kind of served as a sounding board and offering suggestions. Oh, maybe, your dietitian would know XYZ. And after 5 years, I got brave and decided to look into IVF. And in the initial blood work for the IVF, they found the cause of the brain malformation that I lost the 2 babies to. So I ended up having a successful IVF round, gave birth to twins. And shortly after that, I was contacted by the NPKUA to participate in an adult summit where we were focusing on gaps in care for adults with PKU. And I was asked to attend specifically to help with the maternal mentor component, with the maternal PKU component. And the maternal mentor program is what came from that adult summit. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to be able to reach so many more women and help them through their pregnancy, because when I had my oldest, I was returning to diet. I had gone off diet at 18. And I went back on diet to get pregnant with my daughter. And there was a humongous gap in communication between me and my clinic. They said, okay, we're going to start you on 350. I was having 350 milliliters of formula a day. I had no idea they were talking about how much protein I could take in. And my entire pregnancy went on that way. It wasn't until 2 years later that I saw how to measure Phe, because that's not how I grew up doing my diet. So it occurred to me that sometimes something that basic can cause absolute chaos during a pregnancy, when all you need is somebody saying to you, do you know what that means? Oh, here, let me teach you how to count Phe. Oh, you do it by grams of protein? Okay, I'm going to teach you how to do that. And making sure that this poor woman who is pregnant with PKU and overwhelmed with hormones is understanding everything that's going on. And this program has been absolutely amazing and has reached so many people. And every time there's a baby born, it makes me happy.
Oh, that is lovely. You saw a need and filled it. A couple other questions have come in through the Q&A. And again, I think some of these are, I'm going to be on my clinic stance, but questions that would really be a good conversation with the clinic, because I think some of them are tailored specifically to an individual person and their own situation. But I think maybe the mentors and the mentees as well could kind of share what they've heard, different responses to them. One is, how far in advance planning before having a child? How far in advance should you plan?
I would say, in my standard answer for my mentees is consult with your clinic, because my clinic was 3 months. Some clinics are 6 months, and it's going to kind of be driven by the clinic in terms of their protocol. But, I can give them a range and say, check in with your clinic. So.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's clinic and patient based.
Mm-hmm. And this question too, I think is it's clinic and patient based. But again, I thought it might be helpful for people to hear kind of the spectrum that women you've worked with is, I'm going to combine two questions. One, women increasing Phe tolerance as pregnancy goes on. So do most people Phe tolerance increase? And then how often blood work is done and how clinic visit frequency.
I would say the Phe increase is completely individualistic, and it depends on your Phe intake and your formula intake, and really just how your body works, the different mutation you may have.
From the dietitian side of it too, I'd say it kind of is all over the map, and it's tricky to predict. So I would advocate for getting into the clinic.
That's another one of those, every PKUer is different.
Mm-hmm.
Beth, do you mind if I pop in to answer that one question?
Please, yeah.
Okay. I am completely open to it, and I appreciate someone asking. I realized after I mentioned about my 2.5-year-old being born with some complications, this is a tough group to just say that and let it just go. I'm very open to what happened to my son. My son was born with another type of metabolic disorder. You think PKU is rare. My son is one of 30 in the world to have what he has. He, unlike me, has difficulty breaking down sugars, and all of it was undetected, even though I was followed by a high-risk doctor. And there were just several different birth complications. He had difficulty breathing at birth. He was intubated, but I can assure you that it had absolutely nothing to do with me having PKU. I was assured by doctors. I was assured by my mentor, who knew every step of the way what happened before my journey of pregnancy, during, and even afterwards. So I can assure you it had absolutely nothing to do with PKU. But thank you for asking, and you are welcome to. Is it okay if I share my name, that they can follow me on Facebook? Would that be all right with the panel? So my name on Facebook is Katie Bryce, and please feel free, whether it's just to have support as another fellow PKU mom or soon to be mom for some of you, near or far future, I'm happy to be a support in addition to anyone else.
Well, thank you so much. I am getting the signal that it's time to wrap up and turn it back over to Katrina. I don't want to, because I want to keep hearing from you folks, but I want them to ask me back. So Katrina, you want to tell us a little more about the program? And
Oh, sure. Just some other things that I just wanted to note is that if you're interested more about the maternal PKU program, you can go to our website, npkua.org, click on the resources tab, and from the resources tab, you'll scroll down to adult programs. And then on that page, if you scroll down to the purple middle box, that's where you can click on for the maternal mentor program. And there you can get to the program where you can select, just view the list of all the bios of the mentors. The form is on there that you can fill out and sign up for the mentor program. And, you know, please feel free to contact me with any questions that you may have. And my contact information is on the slide, but it's also katrina.swenson@npkua.org. If you go to the Who We Are page on the website, you can also find a listing for myself there as a staff member. But I definitely want to thank everyone who participated in this panel. I thought it was some great conversation and great information, and I think we had a really good, engaging audience as well. So maybe this is something we should consider doing again. I think it would be really beneficial to the community as well. But I want to thank everyone for participating. Thanks, and have a good evening, everyone.